Welcome to Learning with Lerner, where we embark on a transformative journey of knowledge and personal growth. I'm Lindsay Lerner, your dedicated host and guide as we delve into the depths of unconventional wisdom. Together, we'll explore the stories and insights of remarkable trailblazers who have forged their own paths. Brace yourselves for thought-provoking conversations, profound insights, and eye-opening experiences. Our mission is to challenge the norm, ignite curiosity, and empower you to embrace your unique journey. This is Learning with Lerner. Welcome to this episode of Learning with Lerner featuring Carmen Perez, the creator of Make Real Sense. Carmen is a finance professional with experience working at major Wall Street firms. However, her journey towards achieving financial greatness wasn't always smooth sailing. Upon graduating college with a degree in finance, she found herself burdened with student loan debt and struggling to make ends meet. Carmen's personal struggles with money management inspired her to create Make Real Sense, a blog dedicated to helping others avoid the mistakes she made and achieve financial success. In this episode, Carmen shares her personal finance journey and the lessons she's learned along the way, as well as her most recent career switch that involves teaching herself how to code. Join us as we explore Carmen's unique perspective on achieving financial greatness with a touch of humor. As always, listeners, thank you so much for listening. It would mean the world to me if you subscribed, rated, and reviewed this podcast. It really does help. Now, Carmen, thank you so much for making the time and space to be here.
Thank you for having me on. I'm excited.
Heck yeah. I would love for you to share a bit about your upbringing, where that happened, when that happened, and how that shaped your perspective thus far.
So originally from Florida, was born and raised there. I was born in St. Pete, raised in Tampa. And I was brought up in a domestic violence household. My mom got a divorce from my dad when I was like 8. And then we moved to Tampa, bopped around a couple of times. She got married, then divorced. And then, basically she was a single parent when I was in high school, went to high school there. And then I was like, I need to figure out what I want to do for school. I didn't want to be in Florida. I was running track at the time, thought I was going to get a track scholarship. Things blew up my senior year. I had knee surgery in my senior year. Got really depressed from that. And then track scholarship fell through. And last minute, I was like, all right, where can I go that's really fun, that will actually let me in last minute? And I ended up going to FAU for 1 year. And then things branched out from there.
Sure. And then, I need to know, what happened with your knee? Did you just
So it was one of the weirdest injuries possible. I was running cross country at the time just to stay in shape for track. And I ended up fracturing my patella. My track coach at the time, every time I'd come into the office, she's like, baby, your knee is swollen. What is going on? Does it hurt you? And I was like, yeah, it's been hurting a little bit, but I didn't think much of it. And then, went to the doctor, got an x-ray. They're like, your patella is fractured. I have Osgood Slatters, which is really common for soccer players to have, from what I understand. And I think that had an effect. That's why my knee literally just kind of fractured out of nowhere. So yeah, it was a long kind of recovery. And then I just, milliseconds in track, if you're not training, it matters. So that derailed the whole plan. So,
and how did that impact your relationship with your mom? I'm assuming you were close, whether you wanted to be or not, given circumstances.
Oh yeah, my mom's fantastic. Always been a massive supporter, and she was just okay, we got to figure this out. We should have planned a little bit better. I was gonna try to run at DePaul, and everything kind of fell through last minute. And I actually didn't end up applying to FAU until May. By whatever good graces, I was able to get in. So it worked out. I think I'm ready for the falling and crying, 'cause love is a promise I keep.
You have a great sense of humor. At least it matches my sense of humor. So I'll take that. And that's incorporated into at least all of the work that I've seen you put out. Why do you think that it's important to approach a topic like money and finance with humor? And how do you balance that with more of the serious aspects of it?
Oh, it's so important. And I think that's just because of by way of my professional history and just working on Wall Street and it being so serious in such a ultra conservative environment and so stuffy. And I mean, at the end of the day, money is pretty serious, right? It does kind of make the world go round. People need it to just want, live their best life. And a lot of people, unfortunately, don't have that ability to because they aren't even they're not even financially stable. So I think like because it's such a serious topic and can be it can seem very overwhelming. I think having a different approach, so like being able to like weave in humor here and there is so important because it's also very important not to take yourself so seriously. Like in general, but especially when it comes to money, because people even look at me and they're like, you've got it all figured out. And it's like, one, well, I studied this, so I should like at least know something, right? But two, like I also have made a crazy amount of mistakes. Like I can make fun of myself now, like totally. And I was like, but that is what helped me kind of find like that humor and where I said like, okay, perhaps there needs to be balance when approaching the topic about money because it is so serious. And then at least infusing humor in some of my story, it creates this relatability that makes money a lot more approachable for folks.
Totally. What do you think the worst mistake was that you made?
There's so many. So off the top of my head, I was paying 18% interest on my car because I had terrible credit. I had a job offer rescinded from the top investment bank of the world because of my terrible credit. Obviously got sued. That was I think that's probably my biggest one. It was $30,000. I had less than $3,000 saved in my bank account. Yeah, I've taken out payday loans, all kinds of stuff.
Oh, did your credit tank because of the college loan situation?
I had like a very unique situation in terms of like getting sued. And I joke about it, right? But my situation was it was a very predatory lender out of New Jersey. It was very nuanced. So basically what ended up happening quickly here is when I transferred from Rutgers and went to USF, which is a state university, the National Clearinghouse, I was in that database for state schools, and Rutgers said the onus was on me to make sure that I gave proof that I had transferred and was a concurrent full-time student, which in no way, shape, or form was in the note that I had signed, all the stuff. So basically, what ended up happening is they defaulted me while I was a junior in college at USF, going to school full time. Like I was concurrently a full-time student through my 4 years of college. So ended up getting defaulted, and I thought just being like a college student, like, hey, this is a mistake. Like I'm a full-time student. My loans aren't supposed to kick in for like 6 months until after I graduate, give or take, yada, yada, yada. So I completely just disregarded it. I'm like, this has got to be like a clerical error. Also, like completely kind of overwhelmed, right? And that's where I think a lot of people, might perhaps get bills in the mail and start ignoring them. And I literally I was overwhelmed. I think in retrospect, it's like, what is this? Like, this has to be a mistake. And when I called, it was just it was kind of like one of those things where you'd like call your mom, like, hey, I'm like, what am I supposed to select for my 401k? Like when your first job, like you just call your parents up and try to get that guidance. So it was really overwhelming. And I think, so to answer your question, I think perhaps the student loan was the most stressful period in my life. And probably the biggest mistake, because it had so many more far-reaching ramifications had it not been fixed. So I'm completely empathetic to anyone going through this. Anytime my phone would ring, I think it was the lawyer saying like, hey, you're about to, get taken to court, blah, blah, blah. So basically what happened during this lawsuit period is I hired the lawyer with less than $3,000 that I had. I said, hey, can you buy me some time? I need to figure this out. You're not going to kind of believe this, but I've always been a full-time student and like, this is the case. Like, I don't know what we can do. And basically she's like, I don't get I'm not buying what you're basically saying, but I'll take your money. And then she got all of like kind of the evidence of like, okay, you were a full-time student. And on the promissory note, it says that there's no thing about reporting and that, like basically they had violated their own loan agreement by defaulting me. And she's like, you can get this whole thing thrown out. And I was like, no, I took it out. I want to pay back. I'm type A. I want to pay back what I owe, but I need some time here. But this has also caused like material damage in my life, right? I lost a job offer over this. I've had like my credit's been in ruins because of this default, quote unquote, on my my credit report. So it was just a crazy time. It was super stressful. Anytime my phone would call, I literally thought she's like, hey, you're going to have to go to court. And at the time I was working at a private bank. I mean, you could get fired for less than like just being on your phone, like really tiny things. So me saying, oh, by the way, you all, I have to self-report. I have a judgment or like a bankruptcy. You have to do that in financial services. It was scary because then as soon as I report, there's going to be some reason that I get fired. Right. And then that's that. So
Holy shit. Oh, man. And was that when you were working on Wall Street?
yeah. Yeah. That's when I was working on Wall Street.
Oof.
I would go and sit at the steps in front of the New York Stock Exchange eating my sandwich. And I just joked about this like a couple of weeks ago, eating my sandwich that I'd packed and just like, what is going on with my life? This is so stressful. And it ended up, that was like, I mean, I was under that stress for about a year. I was so worried that I was going to have to tell my not my coworkers, like self-report to HR, hey, I got a judgment.
Totally.
And that didn't end up happening, thankfully. So,
oh my gosh, that's so brutal.
Yeah, it was pretty scary. It was kind of like, it wasn't nervous breakdown territory, but it was definitely like hair thinning, kind of like I'm not okay here. Yeah, like I'm super stressed. Anytime my hands would like shake when my phone would ring. Like, okay, this is it. The shoe's gonna drop.
Right. And so while you're on Wall Street, what do you think some of the biggest misconceptions are that people have about building wealth, managing personal finances, as opposed to like your lived experience working in Wall Street?
I think like the biggest misconceptions are, one, you have to be like uber smart to manage your money. And I think a lot of this is by design too, the system. Just after completely, getting my degree in this and studying it for quite some time and being like a self-proclaimed finance nerd, it's the jargon that they make up is like not necessary. And it really creates this barrier for a lot of people to find like that it's approachable. That's why, my outlook is like, bring some humor to it and break it down in a very simple way. Like when you hear the word or like term like credit default swap, it's like, well, what does that mean? That sounds like so tricky. And it's like, these big formulas and all that stuff. And I mean, there's a lot of things that go into it, right? But you could simply break that down for folks. And all of these money commercials and all of that stuff, the jargon is by design. And I think that is probably the biggest misconception, that you either have to have a lot of money or you need to be really smart in order to, understand your finances.
And what was your experience like on Wall Street? I mean, just from what I know, anecdotal, not supported evidence, it's not a heavy female field, never mind any other boxes that you check. So
I for the audience, I check all of the boxes. In theory, finance is great. I wanted to learn about it. It was something that I was super passionate about. Like by high school, I knew like, I want to study finance. This is going to be a way to make great money. I had an economics teacher that told me a story about he was doing some penny stock trading, and I was like completely like obsessed with this story because he lost a lot of money. And I was like, ooh, I want to try that. I'm like not even like a risk taker like that, but it seemed very appealing. So in theory, I think finance is great. I if I could just read about it, watch documentaries like nonstop, I will do that. But in practice, I thought I was going to be working on the on the New York Stock Exchange floor. Like it was all this fast paced, really stressful environment. And it turns out that a majority of the jobs in finance are like in a cube at a desk. You're looking at an Excel spreadsheet or dealing with, like some angry customer on the other end. Overall, it's very stressful because you are dealing with money, and then compounded with like a lot of money. It just doesn't make for like a fun environment. So the environments that I worked in, I'll just say that I try to get out of traditional finance as quickly as possible for the reason of, it being way too conservative. As another personal finance influencer likes to say, Berna Anat, she says it was very male and very pale.
What really was the catalyst that was sparked for you to create the Make Real Sense blog, and how has it evolved since you started?
With my financial journey, and this is like good for anyone that's listening in, because it always happens, and it's with every person that I've coached, something crazy. The universe sends you something nuts right at the beginning of like, I'm going to sit down and get my finances together. And typically, when that happens for a lot of people, it completely derails their train and they don't want anything to do with their money. And then they just fall back into these like old patterns. And I tell all my coaching clients too, it's just like, it's going to happen. And I hate to like, I'm not trying to jinx this, but something is going to come up very early on in this journey of us working together somehow, some way. And it's really going to test whether or not you like really are committed to like trying to change whatever situation you're in or like work towards this goal. In 2016, I started paying down my debt. I was so excited and like, I'm going to get it together and I'm going to be one of those people that retires early and all this stuff. And I started like leaning into this like whole, fire bus. I'm going to figure it out. Right. And I started doing that. And then bam, literally, I started this journey in January, March 4th or 8th. I got the I'm getting sued notice. Okay. So I had already started like, I'm going to share my personal finance tips that I've learned, even in this 3-month journey and, cool. And then that transpired into, well, now I need to like be as transparent as possible. And I didn't share that I was getting sued for a little while because one, my job for compliance reasons, I shouldn't even been, talking about money, let alone like, hey, I'm getting sued just if you come across my page. So I started doubling down on like, this is what I'm doing because I have like a really big goal that I need to accomplish very quickly here, a secret goal that you all can't know about. And so I started sharing those tips and tricks and things that I had learned, kind of like trying to work my way out of debt, or at least like get on a budget and start doing things and yada, yada, yada. So fast forward, like I had been sharing this journey online. I started Make Real Sense, just like, cool, I can have a place to like document this. Financial blogs were becoming like a thing. And yeah, I just started documenting my journey. And then, that's turned into Make Real Sense on Instagram. And then from this audience and building all the things that I've built and just getting out of debt and learning so much and, getting out of finance and learning how to code and going to fintech, just all the things that have happened since. Now that's transformed into, my own company, which is much. And yeah, that's like, that was the journey at a very high level of like how Make Real Sense has evolved.
Was there something driving you or motivating you other than your blind ambition to continue to achieve? Like, was there an end goal in mind? Is this something that you set out to do, or is it more like this innate curiosity that you continue to follow?
It's always innate curiosity, but I always wanted to. So coupled with like, that would be a really cool field to study, finance. Like I knew that it was going to be an important skill if I ever wanted to own my own business. Because just looking at the course curriculum and stuff, you take all these business classes. So I was like, okay, cool. This is like a cheaper way than getting an MBA, I guess. So I have always wanted to own my own company. Always. I pitched my first idea when I was like 11 to that I don't know if you remember the 1-800 commercial, like the 1-800 idea.
I love this. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Tell me what the idea was.
Okay. So this is me when I was like 11 years old, and I put together this baby Carmen. I put together this poster board with the whole visual and like what the thing was, right? So the idea was, this was before they had like color on paper towels and toilet paper. I was like, hey, this would be really cool to get kids to potty train if you put comic strips on toilet paper. Now, I mean, now it would be found at like stores like Spencer or whatever. But I was like, I think this is a good idea. This could get kids to want to engage at least in the bathroom and go in there now, whatever. They're like, yeah, this is great. Give us $10,000. I was like, I mean, I'm fresh out of cash. I'm 11 years old. My first pitch.
What a scheme. That's
oh yeah.
That's brutal.
Yeah. But so yeah, I've always wanted to own my own business. And then by happenstance, this came out of natural curiosity towards something I'm deeply passionate about, which is personal finances and like helping marginalized groups and like, yeah.
In addition to Make Real Sense, like you just mentioned, you're involved in social justice, advocacy. How do your personal values and beliefs inform your approach to personal finance and vice versa?
I like to try to have a platform and created a space where you don't feel any shame around money, because obviously, like, me sharing my all of my dirty laundry should make you feel very comfortable. Like, some most people open up because they're like, my finances weren't as bad as yours. It's like, okay, I mean, we're not judging here. I'm not trying to compare. That's whenever anyone says that, I'm like, all right, like, I'm sharing, but geez. It's like my finances weren't as bad as yours. But no, I try to create a safe, equitable space for people to approach money, and it's kind of hard to find that balance on social media, I will say, because there's so many different income levels and where people are at in terms of financial literacy. So it's really trying to strike that balance to a broad audience, but more specifically, like, Black and brown communities, and trying to get them to, for us and just in general, to, like, move the needle on our finances in an impactful way, that it's not just like a scarcity mindset, but like, hey, if you don't have the income to, not everyone can budget. It's literally a privilege. Most people that don't make enough money are already master budgeters. Like, this content isn't for you, but equally, let's look at trying to increase your income then. And what does that need to look like? Like, truly, like, is it learning a new skill? Like, is it in actually investing in just going back to college or looking for a community college? Is it skilling up? And, so on, like, all those different kind of things. And I think it's important just because of, my background, my mom being a single mom, just seeing her struggle with some stuff. I think it's important to, make money accessible in a real tangible way. And I just fuse, like, everything that's in my background with that, and try to create a platform that, reaches a lot of people without, like, excluding anyone.
Is a lot of the work that you're doing more on the education side of things and like transmitting the information of, hey, the reason why we're all in this super fucked up situation is super systemic. If we would like to change it, like, obviously individuals can make minor changes, but in order to actually make things equitable, how might we go about doing that? And I mean, obviously, like, you have such a big platform and it's, growing every day. Are you working on that? Is that something that you think is possible? Like, how does that happen?
Yeah, so, like, I think of it in terms of, even like with my platform on, like, the company that I'm building out, Much, it's a budgeting platform, and the first four people, personal finance people that I've had on for community events, to be able, I mean, you could sign up for the platform for free and access our webinars and have access to these amazing speakers for free. They're all women, and all women of color. It's kind of like, well, how can we amplify different voices, making sure, like, the dollar is circulating a little bit more in our community. That's something that I'm very conscious of, especially with building this platform. Yeah, there's just a lot of things that I think about, especially with, like, my audience.
It's such a big problem to tackle. And I think that's where I think a lot of people get frustrated. They give up. They're like, oh, like they just feel, disheartened and don't know what to do. And I think a lot of people, at least the folks that I've spoken to about it, blame it on themselves and not to not take accountability. I definitely want people to, take extreme ownership of most things. But in a lot of cases, it's just like the cards are truly stacked against you. So how might we go about changing more of these systemic issues in order to make things like actually equitable and fair for everyone?
I'm under the impression that a majority of the things within the money ecosystem, especially for marginalized communities, it is all systemic, based on policy. And the only way that we can really move the needle or change a lot of things is through policy. A lot of our efforts alone, so, like, education, which is what, my big platform is financial education, it can only do so much. Like, it's not going to solve, the wage gap, the gender wage gap, the wealth gap in this nation, the unequitable practices when it comes to buying, like, a home, getting a mortgage, different types of things that are very subtle. And I'll just give you a quick example. Like, I had a coworker who, we were both working in Florida together. He came up here. white male, and he got a job offer with less experience than me, less certifications than I had, for $75,000 at a bank. He was like, "Hey, I'm going to refer you. This is going to be great. You're going to come in here. You're going to be making a lot of money," right? My offer was significantly, I think it was like 60. Now I can't remember. And I've told the story a few times. It's like, it was either 65 or 60,000. And I said, "Hey, like, I have these certifications and, this and this, and I've been running this team." And they're like, "No, we'll go up like $2,000." But meanwhile, I knew how he told me exactly how much he was making, and like to not get anything less than that. So those are, I think, unconscious bias training and all those different things. That's only going to change with, especially, policy enforcement and things like the minimum wage. People up in arms about like that increasing, where it's just like people are barely making a livable wage. This is an issue. So yeah, I do talk about those things definitely on my platform, and then I go off topic for a lot of different reasons, but the biggest thing is like the policy change and just advocating and educating people around like, hey, this is what it means when you go vote. This particular thing could have a very big impact on a lot of people.
Totally. And so with the platform that you're building now, is that why you went somewhat rogue and taught yourself how to code?
Oh yeah, that's it's 100. So I had, to the extent that I could, all I had was spreadsheets. Like, I was like a Jedi on spreadsheets. And I was like, you know what? Other people could probably benefit from this. So I basically took every single thing that I learned and I put it into these spreadsheets. And I was like, cool, let me just like offer this to my audience for $15. These like old janky spreadsheets when there's plenty of apps out there for free. People hopped on them like hotcakes, and I was like, "Oh, there might be like something here." So I don't know if it's like the system that I've set up, the way that I've presented the information, it makes sense to folks. Yeah, whatever, like whatever that looks like. And I was like, "Hey, this could actually be a business one day." I know there's other apps out there. Like, why couldn't I do this? So I ended up learning how to code, and it was just a good way to like get out of tech. I was already interested in tech. Excuse me. It was a good way to get out of finance. I was already interested in tech. Yeah. So I was like, cool, I'll just learn how to code. And then I ended up, going to coding boot camp, doing all the stuff, and yeah, completely got out. So
that's awesome. And so now are you less make real sense, more into this, like diving into the fintech world, like going for it?
Yeah, so definitely still supporting my community on Make Real Sense, but really trying to, and it's hard to get people to switch platforms, but it's like there's way more stuff on the Much platform. If like you think that, Make Real Sense is giving you digestible information, like we have a free tier where people can come on. We have a community on our platform where I didn't have that. It's like literally we're like Reddit meets personal finance tool. And we're like, hey, you can come and ask these questions that you might be embarrassed to ask your friends or family. You can connect with other people. Like, we have some users that they always share, like, hey, they're working towards their goal. And it's like, it's fire to see these, like I get pumped up. Somebody said that they just increased their credit score and like shared it. And it's like a little more of like a closer knit community where you also have this tool that you can do all of the things that I'm teaching you about on Make Real Sense.
For anybody who's looking to take control of their personal finances and achieve, financial greatness, as you put it, what are some of the practical steps that they can take just to get started?
Practical things. I like to say this wealth framework, and you can just pick and choose kind of what's going to work best for you, or perhaps what you need to focus on a little bit more. So it's called wealth. The W stands for wise spending and budgeting. The second one, E, is for emergency fund. A is for adding assets and managing debt. L is for long-term investments. T is for tracking your progress. And H is for having an estate plan. So if you, in any of those areas, you are maybe lacking or haven't had a focus on, you could pick it up, look into each one of those, whatever area that you need the most help in, and kind of go from there. That is probably the easiest way. If you are an overspender, perhaps you need to start looking at your spending. So that's the wise spending and budgeting. If you don't have an emergency fund set up, which is critical, that's why wise spending and budgeting and emergency fund are at the top of this list. Those are probably the two most critical things. where your money's going, how much you have coming in, how much you have going out in order to like really set yourself up to create a cushion, which is your emergency fund.
Heck yeah. And do you have a specific financial goal that you're currently working towards?
Right now, it is
a not secret goal.
A not secret goal is to raise investor funding. That's on the business side. But personal goal is like to get to my next 100K in investments. So I have an over 6-figure portfolio, but I want to, continue to try to get that to where it needs to be. And I'm not paying myself right now, so that's a little challenging.
Well, we have a lot more to talk about.
Yeah.
And official last question would be, well, it's 2 parts. What is the worst piece of advice that you've ever gotten? And of course, to end it on a high note, what is the best piece of advice that you've ever gotten?
I can't say it was advice. It was just like feedback. It was like, you're never going to work on Wall Street. And I could have taken that and ran with it. And like, I did cry for a little bit after like that comment was said. But then on the flip side, I was like, F this, I'm not going to let this stop me from trying to pursue this. And it ended up working out fantastic because, I've now worked at basically every top Wall Street firm that there is. The best advice that I've ever received, it's a quote. Like, I love this quote and I love ending everything on this is, you're only one decision away from a totally different life, whether it be relationships, job, you name it, like one decision. And the one decision for me was to like change my financial life. And it ended up being the best thing I've ever done for myself.
Well, thank you so much for being here today, for sharing all of the things. And I will link all of the incredible things that you're working on in the show notes. And we'll make sure to share all the things so people can stalk you on all the platforms. And yes, hell yeah. Well, again, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me on.
Thank you for listening to Learning with Lerner and hearing the wisdom, stories, and ideas that will have you feeling inspired and ready to take on the world. If you've enjoyed this, please remember to share, rate, and review. It means the world to me and the team putting it all together. If you're looking for more information, you can find me at lindseylerner.com. That's LindseyLerner.com. Or if you've got any questions or curiosity about me, you can find me on Instagram and TikTok at Lindsey Lerner. Thanks again for listening and have an awesome day.